Our next BC talker tonight is Mergim Bajraliu. Mergim is a sophomore with a biology and Hispanic studies double major in the School of Arts and Sciences. Mergim was born and raised in Newtown, Connecticut, but is actually 100% Albanian by blood and didn't learn to speak English until he was 9 years old. Mergim loves traveling and has visited over 50 countries and nearly all 50 states. And he hopes to one day become a practicing physician. So please help welcome Mergim Bajraliu.
Introduction. So my topic today regards something that's very personal and something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is the Sandy Hook tragedy that occurred almost 2 years ago. So I think it's important to get a basic outline of the family dynamic before I really get into anything. So basically, this is Vanessa. She is my 11-year-old sister, and she is, as I like to call her, my little princess. Then, of course, there's my mother, my father, and my little brother, Ronnie, who's 12. So I'm the oldest child by about 7 years, give or take. So I'm not really going to go into much detail about what happened at Sandy Hook because I think most of us can already discuss and most of us already know what occurred that day. However, what I will say is that on December 14th, 2012, 20 beautiful, innocent first grade children and 6 educators lost their lives at the Sandy Hook Elementary School, tragically. I will discuss briefly my involvement in the event because I think that's important to what I'm going to talk about a little later. On December 14th, 2012, I was at home. It was a Friday, and my mother and I received a call from our neighbor, Karen, and she had insisted that she had heard something resembling gunshots a few miles away or a mile away. I mean, we didn't know exactly the distance of it, but she did hear gunshots echo, and we didn't think much of it, my mother and I. However, we did proceed to call the Sandy Hook Elementary School just to make sure everything was okay. Having gone to Sandy Hook Elementary School myself, and having my brother gone there, and my sister was at her 5th year there, we knew how the system worked at Sandy Hook Elementary School. We knew how things worked. And one of the things Sandy Hook School always did is that they always picked up the phone at the main office, generally on the second ring. So when we called the school, they didn't pick up. That's when something registered to us. There's something wrong here. Why isn't the school picking up the phone? Of course, we didn't understand the magnitude of what was happening at the time. We had no idea, but we were skeptical of something. So as far as my involvement that day, the photo on the bottom right shows myself in the USA jacket and my mother right next to me. And right in front of us is the evacuation of students from Sandy Hook Elementary School, and they're being led out by an FBI agent. After we had called the school and not received an answer, my mother and I proceeded to drive to the school. And between the time of our arrival to the school and the time where we found Vanessa, my little sister, alive, was about 25 to 30 minutes, although it did feel like hours, days. In that 30-minute span, my mother and I witnessed sights that will forever scar us. And I believe those are beyond the context of this particular discussion. However, they were sights that will forever leave a mark on us, undoubtedly. To the right, to the bottom right, is the photo of my sister and I, about 40 minutes after I had found her alive. The feeling of having your sister back in your arms, your 9-year-old sister back in your arms, after thinking, is she alive or is she dead, is absolutely inexplicable. There are no words to describe the feeling and the joy of having your sister back in your arms, especially after such a tragic event. So that photo means a lot to me personally. On the top right is a picture of myself hugging and crying in the arms of Mrs. Leslie Gunn. Mrs. Gunn was Vanessa's art teacher at the time of the shooting, and she, like all the other heroic teachers that day, is a brave teacher. She is a hero in the eyes of Newtown, and she did a wonderful job keeping the students calm, safe, and secure during the events that transpired that day. This particular photo was taken at the Newtown High School during President Obama's visit. So that's a basic outline of my involvement. If you'd like to know more, I'd be glad to speak to you about it more personally. So following the shooting, realistically, the only words that we would hear on the news were death, innocent, children, Sandy Hook, Newtown, parents, crying. All of these words were associated with the tragedy that had unfolded at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And it is true that for some time, America did really weep for Newtown. So out of any experience, good, bad, we as humans have to find a way to extract the good out of any experience. And that's what makes it a learning experience, because every experience, no matter what, has something to offer, something to learn. Even an experience, even an event as tragic as Sandy Hook. And this is what I'm here mainly to tell you about. So you could take these principles that I'm going to talk about and apply them to your own lives here at BC or wherever life may take you. And one of them, and the first and perhaps the most important lesson, is something that Newtown coined, love wins. And this is incredibly important. We live in a world where evil has a very, very loud and very, very powerful voice. I largely believe that is perpetuated by the media. However, that is a discussion in and of itself. But we do know that evil has a very loud voice, because when Sandy Hook happened, we didn't hear about the wonderful things that people did. We heard more about the bad acts that occurred that day. So, yes, evil does have a loud voice, but how does love win? It is the additive love, the cumulative love of different people, of strangers, of friends, of family that come together and suppress that evil voice. The voice of love speaks far louder than the voice of evil in numbers. And that is why Newtown is where it is today. In a sense, more normal than what it once was. This is why I'm here speaking in front of you today. Not because I'm a strong person and I can get over the stuff that happened to me, but rather because of the additive love that people have given me. That is why I have the strength to be here and to discuss and to talk about my experiences that day. And these are just some examples. After the shooting, I received numerous Facebook messages from strangers, family, friends, from places all around the world, places I'd never even heard of before. And it is these messages that offered prayers, words of wisdom, and just good words and advice that helped me get to where I am. It is the other people in my life that helped me come to where I am today. So I can't thank those people enough. Of course, love also came in the form of community events. So I'll give you an example. Boston's own hockey team, the Boston Bruins, you gotta love them. They actually came to Newtown, Connecticut. And this is a picture of my sister and I, that the Boston Bruins support Newtown, Connecticut. And back when Taylor Sagan played for the Bruins, that's my sister and him. So they held numerous events in Newtown at the local youth academy. And it is these events that really helped the community come back to its normality, if you will. It helped us heal. And there was also the soccer night in Newtown that was held. Large soccer stars like Mia Hamm and Landon Donovan, they came, they held events, they signed shirts for the kids of Newtown. And this is just one of thousands of examples of people doing good things that helped us heal. It is the cumulative love of different people that came together. We had survivors from Columbine and from Virginia Tech come to our town and inspire us and tell us how our town could serve as an inspiration in the future. And it was these words of wisdom and these hours of sweat by other people that helped us heal as a community. So love does win in numbers, and it does suppress that evil voice. Going off of that, another really important lesson I learned is that it's the small things that make a big difference to someone. After the Sandy Hook tragedy, not only myself, not only my family, but the entire Newtown community was in a very, very sensitive state. And that's putting it very nicely. We're in a very sensitive state. And when a person or a community or a group of people are in a sensitive state, they are very easily swayed, both by the good and the bad. So you would imagine that if someone were to do something good for you, that good would sway you in a positive direction, especially when you're so sensitive to other outside factors in the world. So that is why, next slide, when I received a message from my high school class president, Rachel, about a year ago, which was 1 year after Sandy Hook, that was still a very sensitive time for me and for the Newtown community. And when I received that message, which took her probably all of 4 minutes to write, it made a huge impact on me. So much of an impact, in fact, that I'm telling it to you 1 year later. It took her 4 minutes to write, but it impacted me so much that I just have to tell other people about it, because I was in such a sensitive state, and that's how much of a difference it made to me. So when a person is in that sort of situation, when they have just undergone tragedy and are in the process of overcoming it, it's the small things that count the most. And here on BC, we've seen it before too. Last year, there was a Newton student who wrote a card for a BCPD officer, and along with the card, left a Reese's, or Reese's, however you pronounce it, and a coffee for the BCPD officer. And it was a very kind gesture. It probably took her all of 3 minutes to write the card and a couple of Eagle bucks to buy those two things. But that simple act not only made the officer's day, not only made the Newton student's day, but the officer passed on the act of kindness to another less fortunate man by buying him a sandwich. So acts of kindness perpetuate. It's a domino effect. And not, if you think about it, that small act of kindness made so many people happy. In fact, the Boston College Police Department posted it on their Facebook page. And the feedback that it received was absolutely positive, generating hundreds of likes from not only the BC community, but other people in the Boston area. So that makes them happy too. So it goes to show how the smallest of things can mean and perpetuate into the biggest of things in a very sensitive situation, such as Sandy Hook. So lesson number 3, relationships matter the most. More than money, more than religion, more than anything, relationships matter the most. Relationships are the things that heal and that restore normality to people's life, because it is family, friends that will always be there for you. So I'll give you an example. Before Sandy Hook, of course the relationship between me and my sister was pretty strong, but to say it was nearly as strong as it is now would be a lie on my part. My sister and I have a relationship that's stronger than ever. And I think Sandy Hook taught me a new principle to live by. The principle that I usually think about when I interact with people is to interact with your friends, family, and anyone in such a way that if God forbid something were to happen to them tomorrow, you would regret nothing. And the reason I say that is because when I was outside of the Sandy Hook School for 40 minutes, not knowing if Vanessa was alive or dead, I was inundated, absolutely inundated by a sense of regret. I was flooded with thoughts telling me, I'm sorry for Vanessa, for some of the things I may have done to you. And I mean, of course I had not really done anything bad, but you still have that regret of certain things that you could have done better. And I think I've learned to live by a principle such that if I talk to my sister, if I talk to anyone, a friend, a family member, I do it in such a way that if, God forbid, anything were to happen tomorrow to them, I would know that I wouldn't have regrets, because I know I fulfilled my duty as a friend or as a brother or as a peer. And I think that's really important. You have to be very conscious of the way you interact with people, because the small things mean the most. And the fourth lesson I learned, and this one's a little unique, this one's a little different, but it'll offer a very interesting perspective, I believe, and that's that problems are relative. And what I mean by that is, and I'll give you an example. I like to think of problems as a sort of a number line, if you will, or just like a straight line. And on the left terminus of that problem is no worries, no problem in your life at all, everything's good. And on the right side is the biggest problem you've ever experienced and the most traumatizing experience of your life, which for me, of course, was Sandy Hook. So if we take a situational example, such as failing a class, failing a class will fall differently on the scale for each person depending on their previous experiences in life. So in John's life, his worst experience and most traumatic experience was the expected death of his pet. Now, that's not to say that the expected death of his pet was not traumatic. It could have been absolutely traumatic. But what it is to say is that perhaps it wasn't as traumatic as Mary, for example, who tragically lost her mom, her dad, and her siblings in a very tragic way. So we have three different scales of problems here. And now if we take the situational example by which we analyze where on that scale failing a class falls, it'll fall differently for everyone. So for me, of course, failing a class is a big deal for anyone that values their education. But people rank it differently based on their experiences. So for me, failing a class, of course, is a big deal. But the difference with me is that I have a perspective. I have perspective on where it stands relative to the other problems that another person could experience in life. So, relative to my worst experience, failing a class isn't all that bad. In fact, failing a class is quite trivial if you compare it to your worst experience. Whereas for John, failing a class might be more significant in his life because he hasn't had as much trauma or as much experience with tragedy. So failing a class becomes something more drastic in his life. Whereas for Mary, who has that point of comparison and that point of relativity, because she's experienced something so bad in her life, that failing a class is absolutely trivial. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's meaningless to her. I'm sure if Mary is a good student, she cares very much about her education. However, relatively speaking, it doesn't mean much. So as BC students, the important thing to do is to be honest in analyzing the nature of your problems. You have to try to put yourself in the perspective, and you have to try to garner perspective onto where your problem would stand on another person's scale. And if that problem turns out to be trivial, then all the better for you, because you realize the trivial nature of your problem. Next. So that's the basic outline of my experiences. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you can take something away from it. Thank you.